Hello everyone, good morning. Let's start the session. So last session we discussed about working with general unit testing, how it works. So one more basic concept you need to understand about how to use. A simple concept we will discuss. How do we work with NGRX? How do we use NGRX, work with NGRX? We will see that. Actually, I explained you some concept already about state management, if you remembered. So we discussed about state management when we learned about a concept called cookies. So state management is used for storing the data and keeping the data available across the requests. So how to manage the data? How do we store the data and transport across requests? For that, I showed you route parameters. We discussed about cookies. They are also part of state management. So when we discussed about two different options, actually in state management, we can use query string. So we can use cookies like concept. So what is problem in the query string, cookies? Certain issues are there. Actually, what are the basic issues that we generally face with query string is actual query string cannot handle complex data. It cannot handle complex data like binary type of data. So we have a limit for data. So we have limit for data, maximum 2048 characters you can submit. And query string is not safe. So it is easy to hack. All these are the problems with query string. And query string is stored in browser logs. Browser logs means it will be stored in browser history. So, and query string can be bookmarked. So it can be bookmarked. All these are the issues with the query string. Cookies also have certain issues. We used cookies, but cookie related issues, you will face, cookies will face CORS issues. Cookies can be disabled actually. If cookies are disabled, you cannot use cookies. So cookies are persistent, like you can delete the cookies. So we discussed about all these options. Cookies also, we learned about Angular cookie, how to use it. Now, what is the purpose of NGRX is actually, generally NGRX is nothing but it is a third-party library. It is a third-party JavaScript library. NGRX is a JavaScript library for managing state in your application. So what you can do is you can store the data, you can access and use across components. Just like you have seen cookie, we can use. What NGRX can do is actually different technologies have different libraries to use. For example, React uses Redux and Angular uses NGRX. These are nothing but they are third-party libraries which you have to import and you have to implement in your application in order to maintain a simple state so that you can store the data and use the data across the requests. That is the main purpose actually. So here how NGRX works, a simple point I will show you. So what it will do, it can maintain local state for your application. It can maintain a local state for your application where you can store the data and make it available across requests, available across components. Across components we can use that. That is what actually the purpose of NGRX. So NGRX will create a store for application. Generally what it will do is NGRX creates a store for application. In that store you can store any kind of data, and actually store is used as a service. If store is used as a service, that means you can inject into any component. You can inject into any component. You can inject the store into any component and you can use the data. So you can store the data centrally for your application. You can store data centrally. That is the main idea. So centrally store the data centrally for application. That means data from any component can be collected and it can be stored so that all other components can use the data. That is the main intention of this NGRX. Actually, how it works, the basic architecture I will simply show you here. Generally, how NGRX works means what are the components inside this. So NGRX usually, this is the basic architecture. So Angular state, this is the basic architecture. This is NGRX state management cycle, life cycle. It has certain phases actually. What are the phases is? Generally in the life cycle phases, first what happens is, these are the phases of Angular state life cycle. In this you will find various concepts like, so we have service, we have effects, we have action, we have reducer, selector, component and all this. Actually what happens, we will first maintain a store for our application. And in that store, we actually maintain the data. Data is maintained inside that store. After maintaining the data in the store, this data is injected into any component by using the selector. It is injected into any component. And whenever component wants, it can use the data. What component can do is, it can modify the data, it can update the data by using set of actions. After modifying the data by using set of actions, this data is stored permanently. The modifications are updated permanently through a service into the data store. Whenever you want, it can access the data from there by using a service. It can collect the data and it can send back. So what action will do is it will take help of reducer and it will again update that into the store. So this cycle will continue. That means data is present in store. That data is provided to component. Component can modify and update the data. Again, it is stored in the store. And from there, it can be provided to any another component. That is the basic cycle, how it actually works. In this, few important terms are there. Terminology you need to understand actually. So what are the basic terms you need to understand in this is, while working with store, means NGRX, the basic point you need to know, the terms you need to understand. So one is actions. You need to know actions. So actions are nothing but actions defines. So you can say it defines methods actually. Methods used to update the store. So actions defines the actions used to update the store. That means there is some data in the store, and if you want to update the data, usually on button click, on drop down change, on blur, on focus, if you want to update the data, that data can be updated on particular action, that is actions. So another one is reducer. Actually, reducer is nothing but it defines the definition for actions. Definition for actions. Definition for action means actions will update, but when they need to be updated, that is decided by reducer. Actions will update, and when those need to be updated is decided by reducer. And we have a store. Store is nothing but it is the location where the data is stored, stores the data. So in NGRX, you will find actions, you will find reducer, you will find store. So actions will update, reducer will define when to update, store will contain the data. And if you want to use the data in any location, then we need a selector. Selector, what it will do is it can inject the store into any component. To inject the store into any component, you need a selector. And you need a state. Actually, the purpose of state is nothing but, so state, it defines initial state and final state. That means initially what should be the value, and finally what should be the value. So it configures. That means before storing the data, there must be some initial data. That means suppose initially it is null. After that it is updated with some data. So state defines the initial value. And of course, one more, you need observable. Observable is nothing but it belongs to RxJS. You know, it is used for maintaining asynchronous actions. Async actions are managed by using observable. So while working with NGRX, you need these basic things to understand. Actions defines when to what to update the data and what kind of data to be updated. When to update it, it is decided by reducer, and data is contained in store, and data is injected into any component using a selector. What are the final and initial values to be? They are defined by state. And observer is used for defining the actions, asynchronous actions actually. I will show you how we can set up and how we can use. Here, we need to know how to first set up NGRX for our project. What you have to do is first you have to install NGRX for your project. To install NGRX for your project, so just you need to run a command ng add @ngrx/store which will get the latest version. And for which project you have to mention the project name. Project is equal to some shopping like this. So first step, just like how you added Angular material, you have to add NGRX library also to your project. It is a third-party library. You have to just add this library into your project and you can start using this library. Let's see one simple example how it works, means how we can handle this. So NGRX we will install in our project. So what we will do, let's go to the project, and this is the shopping project. Let's go to the workspace and we will install here. So ng add, and we need to define what is the library to be added. So the library is configured by using @ngrx, and here we need to install store ngrx/store @latest, and for which project we need to define the project is equal to some shopping. For that shopping project we are adding that NGRX, right? So NGRX, it is for maintaining state in your application. So you are installing this first. We are adding this. Let's add this. It is downloading and installing the library. It is asking, would you like to proceed? So yes. Some problem is there in our Angular library actually. Again, the same problem. The problem is NGRX version issues are there. Actually, NGRX latest version is store version is 15 and our project version, this is common. So we need to set up our NGRX version to 14. So let's see the official website because latest updated to 15 NGRX. So NGRX, yeah. RX. Yeah, this is the NGRX, the previous version. So this NGRX is also recently updated to the latest version. So this is the store and it is saying that it is having the 15 version actually. This is the official NGRX. Let's do one thing. We will just go to install the release here, the documents, the previous versions. Currently version is the 15 version. Previous version is 14 is there. And let's install the version 14. Okay, yeah. So if you want to install this version, so let's install directly store. Okay. So version compatibility will be there. So here NGRX, I am just installing the store. Let's see, it is which version, 14 version, right? So we are installing that for our project. Yeah, it will add, it will be installed. The version dependencies, because recent versions are 15 versions, so make sure that you updated or you are installing the suitable version required for your project. So just you mention at the netfoot. Don't blindly enter 14 or 13, because once visit that website and see which version is the older, because even minor release version also matters. Sometimes the version is 14.2 and you entered 14, then it will be wrong again. You have to mention 14.2 correctly, then only it will work. Okay, right. So that is the basic added. Now it is added. So here I will update for your current project. So you need 14 at the net 14. So this is the version here. So we installed that version. After installing the version, now what are the various phases I will tell you. Once you installed NGRX, there are some certain phases. First phase is, what we have to do is you have to create actions, because actions are going to update data into the store. First we have to create actions. So for that we need a method called create action, and we need to define some action name. This action is going to update the data into the store. What data need to be updated, when it is to be updated, that is decided by reducer. Second step is you have to create reducer. First step, we have to create actions, and what data to update, and when it should update, it is defined by reducer. So we have to create reducer. We have to create reducer. In the reducer, what we have to do, we have to take initial state. Initial state. After taking the initial state, so on, by using on method, we have to get the current state. So that means we need to get the state, and we will just use some state plus 1 or some value we will store into this. That means we have to collect the initial state, and we have to store the updated value into the state. What value to be stored in the state, that you have to decide by using a reducer. After that, what you have to do, you have to configure state in app module. Configure state in app module. Configure store actually. So first we have to define actions, then we have to create reducer, then we have to configure the store. So generally, how to configure store in app module, you have to do this. So app.module, you have to configure the store. Generally, how to configure the store, we will use a store module, and for root level application, because it is a service. For root application, we have to get the state data and configure it. That means we need to define the state. We'll see that practically. After that, what we have to do, we need to inject store into any component. Store into any component. That's what we have to do. How to inject the store into any component? Because it is a service, we know that we have to use a constructor, and we need to define so private some reference name. We need to access private reference. We need to access the store. Whatever data is present in the store, you can access here and you can use it. That is the process. First, we need to create actions. Then we have to create the reducer. We have to create the store and inject that store into application. Actions will define when to update the data, and reducer will define what data to be updated, and app module will make the data available to entire root level application so that you can inject into any component, access and use it. That is what actually the process. Let's see one simple example. How do we implement this? So one basic example of implementing this. So first we need to create actions. I will do one thing here. So in our project, I will create a new file. So we added NGRX into shopping project. In the shopping project in app. So I will add one file. So I will add a new file. Suppose the file name is counter.actions.ts. So first we need to create actions. So in this we have to import. So we need to import create action. So create action from NGRX store. And how do we create the actions? Actions, suppose we want to create a likes counter, like, dislike, some counter, increment, decrement, some counter we need to configure. Then what we have to do here, first we need to specify actions. So we need to define the actions. So what are the actions? So how these actions will work, we need to mention. So first we will define a constant, that is increment. Increment is an action. This increment so will be configured create action, action name. Here action we have to define the type. The type of that action is, so it specifies which component. I will give the component name. So as counter component. Now what this have to do, that means what is the functionality it should perform. So functionality is the increment. Increment is the action. So this is one action. Now we need another action. So another constant, decrement. And a decrement we have to create an action. This will be using the counter component. So the counter component and what is the value decrement. Decrement. That's how we need to define the actions. But these actions are one more action we will do. We will use a constant reset action and create action. So this is having the name counter component. So counter component, actually counter component is acting like a selector. So we have reset. These are three actions we have. One is for increment, another for decrement, another for reset. We have the three actions defined. Now we need to able to access these actions outside this file. So it is important to mark them as export. Okay, that is better. Export. So we need to mark them as export so that these three actions are accessible outside. So one action is increment, another action is decrement, and another action is reset. We have three actions here. So now after you define the actions, second step is we need to define the reducer. Reducer will tell so what this action is going to store, what increment is going to do, what decrement is going to do, what reset is going to do. That means what functionality these three actions are going to do. That is decided by reducer. So actions will configure the functionality. they configure the definition actually. So the functionality is configured by here. So these are only declarations. You are declaring actions, but what these actions have to do, it is not decided. You just declared an action. After declaring the action, what these actions have to perform, that you have to define by using reducer. So we will add another file, and I will give the file name as counter.reducer.ts. So counter action and counter reducer. In reducer, we have to tell what that particular action can do, what increment have to do, what decrement have to do, and what reset have to do. These are the things we need to define. So for that, what we do? So first, we need to import create reducer from ngx store, and we need to import these actions from the actions file. So we will import those actions. What are the actions? The actions we created, increment is an action. So from counter actions, another one is decrement is action. Another action is reset is the action. These are the actions we need to import, and we have to tell what these actions have to do. So I will declare a constant initial state. Initial state, it will have 0. That is the value. What increment have to do? It should increase the value by 1 and store in the store. It have to store in the state. So what have to do is, now we need to configure the reducer. So export constant. So we have to create reducer, that is counter reducer. This counter reducer is using create reducer. In the create reducer, first we have to define initial state. We need to configure initial state. After that, we have to tell on increment what should happen, on decrement what should happen, on reset what should happen. So we need to write on what is the action. On action is increment. On increment, what to do? We need to use a callback function. On increment, what to do? On increment, what to do? We need to use a callback function. In this, we have to collect a state, and this state should return the state incremented by 1. The value increments by 1. That is on increment. On decrement, what to do? On decrement, we need a callback function. It will collect the state, and it will use state minus 1. It will decrement the value by 1. What reset will do? On reset, we will use a callback function state. What this state will do? It will just return 0. State will return 0. These are the actions you need to define. So first, you mentioned what are the actions required. Second, you mentioned what functionalities these actions have to do. Creating actions and defining functionality for these actions. Reducer defines the functionality for the actions. After reducer defined the functionality for these actions, now what we have to do is, we need to configure this in the app module. Third step is we have to configure in app module so that we can use it. So actions are ready, reducer is ready. Now we need to go to our app module.ts. In app module.ts, here we have to import reducer and store. We need to import the reducer and store. So what we need to define here is, so in the top I am defining here, we need to import So one is store module. We have to import store module from NGRX store. So after importing the store module, so we need to define the store module. So I think a duplicate identifier is there. Where is that? Some store module is already imported here. Already it is imported, so we don't need to import this again. So the store module is already configured here. You can see store module is already imported. So once store module is defined, now what we have to do? So we need to import the reducer also. So we will import. What to import? We have to import the counter reducer. Counter reducer contains the actions. Now what we need to do is at application level. Why you are writing in app module? Because you are configuring in application level. Here in NG module, you have to go to imports. Where is this imports? Yeah, you can see store module is already configured for root. In that, there are two specifications defined. So what we need to do here is for root level of application, we need to tell what is the data and from where this data is coming. So we need to just define a reference called some count. It will come from counter reducer. From counter reducer, this count is coming. That's enough. So we like this, you can add any number of objects. Currently we are having only one object. We are defining that object. So store can manage any kind of objects. So currently we are maintaining only one object called count. That means the state related values are now stored in the reference of count. That means what counter reducer is doing? Counter reducer is incrementing the value and it is returning the value into the state. That means if it is 0 plus 1, if it is 1, then that state value will come and it will store in the count. That is how it is configured. Now, once the store is configured in application, now you can use it in any component. You can use in any component you want. Let's do. We will add one component. So generate any component. Suppose I am generating a component. So let's add a component here. In app, I am adding a component. So ng generate component, and I will use some likes. Likes is the component name. Just I am defining likes is the component name. So enter. So likes component is created. Now in this component, we want to use increment, decrement, and the values. So I will make the likes component in the startup. In the bootstrap, likes component is in the startup, and in index, we will change to likes, app likes. So that likes component is in the startup. We defined that here. Now we will see here the likes component is in the startup. So it's working fine. Now we need to design this component and we need to access the data and use the data. Now how we can configure that? Let's see, go to the likes component and here we can access the data and use it. In the likes component TS file, first here we need to configure an count. This count have to collect the data and have to use the data. We need to get the count and we need to use it. So, and count is what? It is an data asynchronous type. So by using observable, we will configure it. So what we will import here is, we will import an observable from RxJS we are importing. After importing that, now we will configure the count. So we are declaring the count here. So we are specifying the count. Now the count is defined, and count is what type? It is an observable type. Observable type. So what kind of data it is expecting? Number. That is how we specify. So it is a property and it is expecting observable type. Now here you can see some problem is there. It is saying that it have no initializer. So it is not defined with any initializer. Means it's not initialized with any value. Actually, when you configure that initializations, so it should get us the initializer. So what we will do is, so we need to define the initializer for that and we can use it. So how we can define the initializer, we'll see that. So initializer is nothing but that means it is not initialized with any value. So we need to configure. Because it is expecting a number type. So initialization, suppose I defined as null. That means it is not configured. That means this observer must be of type null or this type. If you make it as any type, then initializer is not having any problem. That means here we can make this as any type. And we can configure some value to initialize into this. So we need an observable to initialize some value and use it. So what is the value type we are expecting to collect here? The value type is usually number. So we will do that. First we will inject this observable, we will do that. First we will inject the service into constructor private store. We have to get it from store. So store is injected from our NGX store. What this store can do is it can collect the store that is present at application level. Application level means in app module, this count is used as a store now. This is where data is present. We have to access that and use it here. That means what we need to do. So we need to configure store. This store is a generic type. What it will do, it will collect the count which is present in the store, and count is what type? Number type. We are accessing that count. First we are injecting it. Now after injecting this, what we will do here is, so we will access the count and use the count. That means here this dot count. So we need to first initialize a count. Into that we need to store the data coming from this count value. You must initialize some value. So here I will declare a count. So that means whatever data coming here, we will store in a reference. So then I will declare here. So a property called public. Some count property we will define, and it is what type? So it is an observable type. Because both are using count, I will put a reference dollar here, and I will put observable. Observable of what type? So of number type. That is how we are configuring, and the default here number. Its type we will define as number or null, or what is it? Any type, that is fine. Okay, yeah. because it can be an observable of number or it can be any type. So by default, we are defining some number. So if you remove that any type, if you configure, that's enough, because either it is a number or any kind of data that is decided when dynamically the value comes. So now we need to configure this, and we need to use here this dot count. This dot count is equal to, I just use a dollar because the same count reference I am using. So what we have to do, store dot select. By using store select, we can select the value from where the value is coming. Value is coming from count. This is the store. This is the key. In this key, the increment, decrement values will be stored. Now what we have to do is, so we need to update the data into store on increment, decrement, and reset. That means we need to write three methods now. One method for increment, another method for decrement, another method for reset. What these methods have to do, they have to dispatch increment function, decrement function, and reset function, so that the values will be incremented, decremented, and reset. So we need to create three methods here. One is increment method. So we will create some public increment method. What this increment method have to do? This increment method have to trigger the increment action. It have to dispatch the increment action so that the value will be incremented by 1 and it will be stored in the store. So this dot store, it have to dispatch. It should dispatch increment method. It should dispatch the increment method. The action method is increment. So that is the increment method it has to dispatch. That increment method it should dispatch. Now this increment, decrement methods we need to first import. So from where we have to import, you know. So we have to first import those three methods, increment, so decrement, so and reset, decrement and reset. These three methods, and first on increment it will dispatch increment, on decrement it will dispatch the decrement. So this dot store dot dispatch decrement it will dispatch. So and on reset it will dispatch reset. So public, so reset it will dispatch reset. So this dot store dot dispatch reset. But when these increment, decrement, reset should work, so on button click we will put increment, decrement. So when user clicks the increment button, automatically it will dispatch increment action. What increment action will do? Increment action is going to increase the value by 1, and after that it is going to store in the application. In application, in which reference it will store? In count it will store. That count we are collecting and we are storing in this count dollar. That is the reference where the count is stored. Now we need to display this count in the UI, and we need to define these actions in the UI. Let's go to the HTML page. Here we will just create a simple div. So class, so container fluid, yeah. And here we will put here some likes counter, something like this. And here we are defining, so button. So one button we defined, so this is for increment. Another button we defined for decrement. We have increment and decrement button. And we have some reset button. So we are configuring some button, that is reset. These are the three buttons here. Now what these three buttons have to do? These three buttons have to handle the navigation. So what are the navigation? That means they have to handle the three functions: increment, decrement. So on click. So we will write on click. This will call the method called increment. What increment will do? It will dispatch increment and update the data into store. And on click decrement, it should dispatch the decrement and store. And on click, this will reset. It will dispatch the reset. These are the three actions. And where is the data? Data is present in suppose count. I will just keep here a div. And here we say just heading like, and here we need to get the count. So the count dollar, so which is having the updated count value, we need to configure that. That means now what happens is, so this count is actually here important. You will see this count is an observable type, means it is an asynchronous value. Asynchronous value means we have to update that asynchronous value in our UI by using the pipe called async. We discussed about this async pipe, we will see later. In this kind of situation, that means if any value is asynchronously updated, then we have to define this async. We need to configure this async. So because the type of the count is asynchronous type, we need to access and configure that. You can see likes counter is initially 0. When I click increment, it will be incremented by 1. It will be incremented by 2. So decrement will decrement. So it will set, and increment, it will increment the value, and I click on reset, it will reset to 0. Now this value will be stored. This value will be stored in the likes counter. What you can do is, it is stored in application level. That means same like you have used cookie. Now you can go to any component, and in that component, you can access the count from store. Automatically, the count will be updated. It will be automatically updated. It will be updated into which location? So into the application level store, so that you can access and use it from any location. That means this count value is stored at application level. That means from any component, we can access that value and use it. To access in any component, just we have to use the injector. That means what we need to do. So we need to inject the store. Through that, we need to get the count, and we can access and use it. So in every component, you don't need this to define increment, decrement, and all. So in every component, what we do, just we can access the store, we can collect the count from the store, and we can use it. By using the select method, we can access the count, and we can store in any local reference, and we can use it. So that means the data stored in one component, it is now accessible to all other components and available to other components. Now this data is globally stored at application level. We can store the data, and we can access, and we can use it. This is basic state management, how data can be stored centrally for application, and we can make it available across the components. So we can use the route parameters for transporting data. We can use cookies for transporting the data across components. We can use input and output properties, which we already used in lifecycle. We can use these kind of state management techniques. Actually, this is a third-party state management. So it is not officially from Angular, but it is a JavaScript library which you can use in Angular to maintain the state and manage the state. This is one simple basic example to understand how this concept works. So this is the point about how NGRX is used to maintain the state for our application. Without NGRX, I showed you route parameters also. I showed you cookies also. So we can manage cookies. We can store data in cookies. We can access and use it. If data is large, it is complex, then instead of cookies, you can go with this. So we need to create a store, update the data into store, inject the data from the store and use in any component. For that, various phases are required for us. This entire example I will upload. You can go through that example. So this is how NGRX works for our applications. That is one concept about state management. This entire note I will upload. You can try this example. Next, another component, another concept, one more just overview I will give you, that is how we can deploying on cloud. Actually, if you have knowledge of Git, if you have knowledge of AWS or Azure like cloud technologies, so you can implement that. You can easily implement and you can easily manage that. So if you have an awareness on these, but you can use cloud like Firebase, you can use like GitHub pages and all. Deploying is nothing but so making our application live so that we can access and use from any location. So we can contribute from any location. So generally, AWS, Azure, for every purpose, we need a different library. And you should have good knowledge on those tech concepts. You need to learn Azure or AWS, and you should know all the configurations in order to deploy. I hope many of you people have learned or have an idea on GitHub. But anyhow, I will just give you one small process of Firebase. Firebase is a Google Cloud. You can create a simple Firebase account and we can see how our project can be deployed. I will show you a simple process. So how we can deploy. So first what you have to do is generally in order to deploy on cloud, we can use this Firebase cloud. So first we will make this project startup with shopper template is there, we will use it. Shopper template have a shopper index. I will keep that shopper index in the startup. That means in the bootstrap, I will keep a shopper index component in the startup. And in index.html also, I will keep shopper index. Okay. This is shopper index in the startup. Because we created a good routing with that shopper index actually. This is. Now this is actually working here. So we have these options working here, register, and all these login options are available. Now what we want here is this, we want to make it live. If you want to make it live, so then we can go to Firebase, firebase.com. It is a Google Cloud. You can log into this with your general Google account actually. Now here, first you create a new project in this Firebase. You create a project, go to console, click on console, and you can create a new project. I will add a project. It is asking what is the project name. So I am using a free cloud. In a free cloud, there are limits for number of projects to create actually. So it's okay, that is enough. I have 3 more projects limit. We can delete the project after it is done. So project name I am giving. Project name I will give as like some Angular shopper template. Angular shopper template is the project name I am giving. Okay. Now you need to make sure that you given a name, so which is unique actually. Otherwise, if that name is already taken, they will show you that it is already taken. Okay, I'm creating a project. Okay. It will add Google Analytics for testing your project. Okay, continue. Select account, a free account, default Firebase account, and create project. First, we are creating an empty project on our cloud. This is Google Firebase Cloud. You can use your GitHub pages also. If you learned GitHub pages, you know GitHub pages, you can use it. So here, so I am showing you on Firebase Cloud. So here what we are doing is, first we are creating a project on cloud. That the project name is Angular Shopper Template. Okay. After creating the project, now we have to push our project into that cloud so that we can see it live. For that first step, what we have to do is we have to install the Firebase related tools in our computer. Remember, your computer must have Firebase tools installed. For Azure, Azure tools will be there. For AWS, AWS tools will be there. You have to install. So how do we install? So we will first go into our command prompt. In your computer, globally you have to install. So that is npm install globally. So Firebase tools. Firebase tools you have to install. Like that, Azure tools will be there and AWS tools will be there. Actually, if you are using GitHub, I hope you know GitHub desktop is there. You can try that. So this Firebase tools already installed in my computer. I have to install this first. Already it is installed. Just what we need to do now, we need to add the Firebase library to our project. So let's open the workspace. And here we need to add Firebase library to our project. So ng add, so at the net Angular/fire, and for which project is equal to shopping. For shopping project, so we are adding this Firebase tools. First we have to install Firebase tools. After that we have to add Firebase library for our project. It will install, yes, install, proceed. It is going to download and install the Firebase library. Like that, AWS library, Azure library separately will be available. I will post a document. In that document, different cloud libraries will be there. You can try them. But for that, you need to learn that cloud. So you need to learn Azure, AWS in order to deploy that. This is a free one, you can try. You can see that here. So Firebase. First create a project on Firebase. After that, add Firebase to your computer. First install Firebase tools. After installing Firebase tools, now you have to add Firebase library to your project. After adding, so here it will ask you a few questions. We need to just follow that. It is adding the Firebase tools and installing the Firebase tools. So while adding, it will ask you that what are the features you want to add from Firebase, because Firebase is a big cloud service. Firebase will provide a lot of services. Out of that, you have to choose which service you want. Generally, we want hosting service because currently we are using Firebase for hosting our Angular application. So we need just the hosting one. So you have to select the hosting service from the list. It will show you the list. What are the services provided? You have to choose it. Now you see it is successfully installed and it is updating the package JSON file and all. And it is now asking which feature would you like to use. Currently we are using for hosting. That means we have to select is it authentication, Firestore, real-time database analytics, for which purpose it is. We are using for ng-deploy hosting. That means we are using for hosting. So you select that hosting. You can select multiple also. I'm just selecting hosting because our concept is now hosting. Okay, now it will ask what is the project you want to use, which site you want to host. We created a Angular Smart Shop. We have to select that Angular Smart Shop. That means it will now ask you, so which one you want to use. That means it will show the list of projects that you already have in your cloud account. It will ask you which project you want. So you need to choose the project that you want. This cloud doesn't depend on your versions. No? This cloud doesn't depend on your versions. Okay. Obviously, when you install, it will ask you the version on. So here you can see it is asking which project to use. Which project to use? I will select the project as Angular Shopper template. That is the project to use. Angular Shopper template. Okay, we will select that project and hit enter. Angular Shopper project is selected. And see now, it is showing that now a site will be created by this name. Okay, we will continue with that. Now, this is the site created for us. That means our project will be hosted in this location actually. But we will see it is not finished because we just configured first. We just configured. So what is the cloud location? But now next step is what? We need to push our project into that cloud location. First you configured, now you need to push. How do we do that? Two steps are there. We have to run the command ng build project is equal to shopping. Now what it will do is, it will build your project and make it ready for deployment. So we have to build the project. So once you build the project is ready for deployment. What happens now? When you run ng build project shopping, automatically it will create a folder called dist, D-I-S-T. Into the dist folder, it will keep all the project related resources. That folder is ready for production. It is production ready. That is the folder for production. So building is, it is verifying are there any issues in your project or not. Now, if there are no issues, then automatically it will generate a folder. That folder is ready for deployment. So what we are doing is, first we created a project on cloud. After creating the project on cloud, we linked that cloud project to our project. after linking that, we have to push all these files into that cloud. Then it is ready. It is ready and it will be running in which location? This is the location, Angular shopper template. Currently it is still not ready because files are not updated into it. Only URL they have given to us. Now we need to build the solution. After you build, automatically you can see a folder will be created into workspace. And the folder that is created in the workspace, you can see the folder name is dist folder. This is the folder ready for production. That means this is the folder that goes live. That means all the files are synchronized, all the bundled into this location. Now what we have to do after building, now just we need to deploy these files into cloud. So how to deploy? We have to just run the command ng deploy, and which project to deploy? Project is equal to shopping. We have to deploy that project shopping. Now what deployment will do is it will push all the files into that particular location. That means it is building. It is generating the application bundles, and it is going to push all the files into that particular project. So cloud, onto the cloud it is going to push. Everything ready now. So it is deploying, hosting, 17 files found, and it is updating all those 17 files. So, and finish, deployment finish. Now your project is running in this location. So let's open that in a separate browser location. We will open that here. Let me open the URL, and here we will type. This is the location where the project is running. I will copy this, Angular shopper template web app. When I run this, now you can see our project is live here. That means now it is not using localhost 4200. Our project is live. Now here our project is working with all the same concept here. But remember, databases and other APIs, these will not work here. Why? Because databases and other APIs, in order to work, you have to upload the database into the cloud, configure the database into cloud. You have to connect the APIs in the cloud. For that, you have to learn the cloud technologies. That is not the concept of general Angular. First, you should know how databases are configured on cloud, how they are defined. In every cloud, it is different process like AWS and Azure. But currently, now our project is live and it is running as a website like this. So anyone can access, anyone can see, anyone can use this template now. This is basic deployment. So we can try deployment on cloud like Azure, AWS, Netlify, GitHub Pages, NPM also is there, Firebase is there. You can use any of these. So this is basic of deployment. We have to build and deploy. This process also I will upload into Classroom. You can try that. So you can create a simple cloud account. So you can just create a sample project and deploy your project. But before that, create a good navigation environment and all, then you can see it practically working. Okay. This is all the deployment concept, how we can deploy onto cloud. So with this, we complete all the part of Angular. So all these details I will upload into Classroom. Okay. And I will enable commenting into the Classroom. If you have any doubts, you can post that comment into the Classroom. Mostly by today, I will upload all the interview questions and sample resume format and everything to you. You can go through them. Okay. And if you have any doubt, you can post into the Classroom if you have facing any doubts related to any concept. Okay. So with this, we finish all the concepts and I will upload all the documentation into the Google Classroom. Okay. I hope you are all clear into the concepts. Huh? Right. You can continuously access, right? You can continuously access. I will make a video of the new version of Angular 15 and I will upload into Classroom. You can go through that, right? Because again, Angular 15, I need to reinstall in entire my machine with the new. So because your class is going on, I cannot reset the version for that. That's the reason. So I will make a video and I will upload there, right? Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I will upload all those into the documents. Yeah, today video also I will upload, right? Now, currently we are not taking any .NET MVC batch, Vishal, right? Yeah. Yeah, today's video I will upload, right? So all videos it's not possible to upload, right? No, I'm not taking any .NET batch as of now, right? Yes, completed. Yeah, I will upload all the documents today, right? All the documents, interview questions and all these things, right? I will upload a document where you will find this different versions compatibilities, upgrading. Already I showed you upgrading in the first day. I will upload. Yeah, I said that I will upload a document where you will find all the version differences and upgrading to versions. I will upload the document. Okay, guys, right. You can practice you from Angular material. In Angular material, all the components are there. You try. Okay, guys, thank you. So